Please welcome Raj Thakkar.
Thank you so much for having me today. I think we should give a big round of applause for the two previous performers. They did a great job. So I sincerely appreciate being welcomed with open arms, with open hearts by all of you. Everyone at IYF has been so wonderful to me so far. I was absolutely blown away by the performances yesterday. The opening ceremony was just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so glad that I attended to witness it and what IYF is all about. So I'm here to discuss leadership, entrepreneurship, and I will do my best to try to inspire you and do it in a way that still remains humble. So I'm going to try to find a fine balance between the two, because the last thing I would want is for you to be like, what was up with that guy? He was so strange and arrogant or something, you know? So I identify as a social entrepreneur. Who knows what a social entrepreneur is, actually? Okay, good. We got one person. So I'll take a minute to explain it. So social entrepreneurs use the power of business to do good for society, good for your community, good for the environment. So using the power of business to do good for the world is something that I'm very interested in, and I hope that I can interest you in it. So my socially minded business is called Charter School Business Management, and what we do is we manage the finances for charter schools, or we can teach them how to handle the finances on their own. So when I say handle the finances, what does that mean? That means doing their accounting and bookkeeping, managing their budgets, processing their payroll so that everybody gets paid, financial reporting and forecasting, and preparing them for their annual audits. And why did I do that? It's because 1 in 7 charter schools is shut down, and 80% of those shutdowns is because of financial mismanagement. And to me, that was a travesty, because charter schools are public schools that locate in the toughest neighborhoods. So if I live in a certain tough neighborhood, challenging neighborhood where there's a lot of crime and drugs and whatnot, you're zoned to go to a school that's typically not a great school. So what will happen is a charter school founder will say, I would like to open a charter school in Harlem or in East New York, or different neighborhoods that are challenging, and then the parents will actually enter a lottery and say, I can try to get my child in because I know the school that they're zoned to go to is not a good one. So let me try and see what this charter school is doing. So when I saw how many charter schools were opening and they were doing great stuff, their student test scores and learning and comprehension was doing much better than they would have in the traditional public school, when I saw that some of them were shutting down and a good portion of them were shutting down because of financial mismanagement, I said, I have to go and do something about that. So took a leap of faith. And I highly encourage you, for those entrepreneurs out there that want to launch their own companies, their own businesses someday, you can do it too. So give some background. I didn't just jump into this. I didn't just identify this out of nowhere. I used to be the chief financial officer of Explore Charter School, which is in Brooklyn. And I helped their school founder with managing his finances. So when I first started, the job description was this big, and by the time I saw how many financial things that he was still doing, my job description became super long. It was a huge amount of work. But what worked well was he knew finance, he knew academics, he knew how to push student achievement, and I knew how to manage money. So it was a really good partnership. And then after helping the school get fully renewed for another 5 years, I said, listen, in the process of helping you with your dream and building your dream, I've built a dream of my own, and I'd like to go out and take this leap of faith. So he was resistant at first. He said, I don't want to see you go. We've done such great work together. But I understand, and I respect that you have your own dreams, and I encourage you to follow them as well. So got my first contract and started working from there. So fast forward 8.5 years later, it went from just me to now we're a team of 35 full-timers that are helping 100 charter schools in the 5 boroughs of New York City. I can't believe that it's grown from $0 in revenues, and we're projected to be at $5 million in revenues this year. And the responsibility that those 100 schools have given us is they have an average of $5 million in budget each. So we're actually managing $500 million worth of public funds. And believe it or not, I'm telling you, if you have a passion that you want to launch your own business for some cause, you can totally do it yourself. And how did, so I wanted to explain to you why I took the leap of faith. So one was I came from a very long line of entrepreneurs. My father was a businessman, my grandfathers were both businessmen, my great-grandfathers, and it was just in our blood. So that gave me the confidence, because when I did take the leap of faith, I was very nervous. I was very reluctant, but I had to do it. I had to challenge myself. I had to change myself. I saw so much change that needed to happen, and I had to have the grit and the perseverance to go and do it, and I encourage you to do the same. So a little bit of background. My father had a convenience store in Astoria, Queens in New York. I was a born and raised New Yorker, never left. I don't think I'll ever leave here. So I was working at his business since I was 4 years old. I would refill the candy, the chips, the soda, the cigarettes, the newspapers, all of that stuff. I did what I could. And then as soon as I was tall enough and I would stand on a stool, I would handle the money, and I would see the free flow of money coming in and out where people would buy something, and I would quickly add up everything in my head. And that gave me a lot of comfort of dealing with money. And it's a reality that I encourage all of you to face someday. Is just the in and out of money is you have to spend money, you're going to earn money. If you hold on to it for too long, it may leave your hands, and if you spend too much, then you'll have nothing to spend at some point. So I encourage you to think about money as like a flowing river that is just constantly being replenished as long as it's in balance. So some of the challenges that I went through. So when I was young, it was also my older brother who was at the convenience store with us, and we both had choices. And the choice that he made is not one that I was making. He felt like, oh, we're so young, we shouldn't be working, we should be having fun all the time. And the choice that I was making was, I'm having a great time. I'm spending time with my dad. I'm spending time with my brother. I'm learning from my father, and everything is about big choices. So I considered myself learning from the absolute best. I thought my father was just an amazing businessman. He built relationships with his customers, and he had the same customers for 20 years until he had a few heart attacks and had to stop working and retire. But I learned a lot from him, and I love to see how many similarities there are between the mindset that IYF brings to you and the mindset that I've had, since growing up. So my dad was always into the servant leadership mindset of, let's just help someone else in the best way that we can, do it timely, do it the best way that you can, and you do it without any kind of expectation in return. And then when you do good first, it's very encouraging, and then it makes someone else want to do good, and then everyone just keeps paying it forward. So another a funny story, when I got my first contract and I was fully on my own, it was very mentally exhausting, and I was constantly thinking about how can I be successful, how can I not fail, how can I make sure that this all works. So it was very mentally challenging, and what I chose to do on top of that was I chose to train for the New York City Marathon. You may think I'm crazy, because on top of all that mental drain and then the physical drain, it was one of the best moves that I made, and I was so excited to see yesterday that IYF is all about running the 5K and pushing yourself beyond your boundaries. So what I found was when I was training for the New York City Marathon, it actually sharpened my mind because the physical aspect was engaged, and everything just got better. So after that, I felt like I was totally unstoppable. So I encourage you to do the 5K, to run and keep fit. You have to challenge yourself in order to change yourself. So I'd like to now, for the entrepreneurs who are thinking about launching your own businesses someday, I'd like to just share some different key messages. So the first message is frustrations and problems are actually opportunities in disguise. So what was I frustrated about when I was thinking about launching my business? One was in my previous workplaces, there was a lot of backstabbing, there was a lot of lying, there was a lot of talking behind my back, and it was really, it just didn't feel good. And with work being where I was almost so much of the day, I wanted work to be a nice place to be. The second frustration that I had was at the school was there was so much professional development for the teachers and the principals, but for the finance and operations people, there was really very little. So I said, well, I want to be that. I want to create the professional development for finance and operations people. The third frustration I mentioned before is the financial mismanagement was shutting down so many charter schools. So there's my opportunity. I said I can create my own organization that can help solve all these three problems. The next key message is what I call business karma, and you may have noticed it in the opening video. So to me, karma, some people call it what goes around comes around. But business karma to me is you always do what is right. Whether it's good for your business or not, you have to do what's right, and then typically, in some way, shape, or form, it will come back to you. May not be necessarily from that particular individual or group, but it may come back to you in another way. So I'll give you 3 examples. When I first launched the company, I was volunteering with lots and lots of people to try to help them and get my name out there. And in my panic, I said, oh my God, I have this business. I reached out to my old friend JD, who was my classmate at NYU when I got my MBA in finance. And JD, the funny guy that he is, he said, oh, I hear you about this idea, but what's going on in the personal front? What's happening with you? And I said, oh, I broke up with my girlfriend. And he said, well, hey, you want to meet I have some interesting folks for you to meet with. And he ultimately introduced me to my wife, Nadia. I didn't know at the time, but that's some of the good that came from that, which is, I'm so thankful. She's had such a tremendous, impact on my life, as well as our daughter, Reina. So the other thing that I always freely do, and I still do to this day, is whenever there's someone out of work, if they've lost their job or they're looking to quit and they're looking for a change, I always sit down and meet with them, because if you don't have work, you don't have a paycheck, you cannot support your family, you may become homeless, so I always feel for folks that are out of work. So it's very exciting that I helped about 80 or 90 people get jobs and it's impacted them, and then later they always wanted to return the favor and say, hey, I know a school that needs your help, or I know an accountant or a bookkeeper that can come join you, join your growing team, and then they always want to look back. So, but I encourage you to give first. The other opportunity, the other thing that was done, which was exciting, is when I first went out on my own, I told people about the idea. The amount of discouragement that I faced was incredible. I always thought that if you go and take that leap of faith, that people would encourage you. And it was not the case whatsoever. It was like, oh, that'll never work. What's wrong with you? Why would you ever do such a thing? And it's a good thing that I'm very stubborn and I wanted to do it anyway. But so now, if there's any of my colleagues and friends that want to go out on their own and launch their own companies, I sit down with them. I explain exactly this is what was done. Avoid these mistakes. And I encourage them because it's one of the most empowering things that you can do. Another concept is what I call the reward for good work, is more work. So whenever people would complain at previous workplaces, they would always say, oh my God, there's all these people that just keep giving me work, it's more work. And I said, well, listen, if there was no dysfunction at these organizations, we would all be out of jobs. So we to a degree, need this dysfunction, not this much, but we need to get in that mindset of we have to have work, because then that creates jobs, and then we've referred all sorts of business to other people, and that creates jobs for them, and it's just this trickle effect that really is very powerful. Another concept is just accepting who you are as you are, and recognizing your strengths, and while understanding your weaknesses. So in college, I actually studied bioengineering. So it's strange that I got into finance. So why did I do bioengineering? It was mostly because my older brother was a doctor, and my parents came from India, and they said, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if we could have 2 doctors in the family? They would feel so proud. So I said, let me pursue bioengineering. That will make my parents so happy. But meanwhile, if a doctor gives me a needle in my arm to take some blood or something, I can't even look at it. So I don't know who I was kidding. But my last semester, I actually took Intro to Finance, and then I said, oh my God, I should have been doing this all along. So the next concept is I'd like you to just close your eyes, and for 30 seconds, just imagine. Everybody closed? Okay. Just imagine 2 things. One is who you regard as a really good leader, and what attributes that leader actually had. So just 30 seconds. Okay, you have that image. So what I'd like to do is to encourage you to emulate all those habits of those great leaders, and you can channel those ideas and concepts and beliefs yourself. Who I always envision as a great leader is Mahatma Gandhi, and the reason is because he accomplished getting India's freedom and did it in a non-violent way. With all the violence that's going on in the world, it's so frustrating to me. But to move those types of mountains and do it in a non-violent way is just so important. Another concept is if you're nervous about networking and sales, because if you run your own business, you're going to have to aim for word of mouth. If you do such a great job, then word of mouth travels, but word of mouth has to start with your own. If you're not going to try to pitch yourself and sell yourself, then who else is going to? So you have to start that yourself and build a comfort with sales. So the way I always viewed sales is I believe in our company, I believe in what we can do, and I'm just trying to help another human being, I'm just trying to help another company, and if they don't want the help, that's perfectly fine, and it can move on from there. Another key message is just to listen. Listen with an open heart, listen to your staff, because your staff will really help you. I've got an amazing team at Charter School Business Management. They have created so many great ideas, and now they're just running everything, and I just have to sit back and watch and say, wow, they're doing such great things, and then I focus on all the tomorrow type activities where we grow the organization. Each of my team members was kind of wounded in some way at a prior work experience, so now they absolutely love where they work, and that's one of the reasons why we became one of the best places to work in New York City as per Crain's New York Business. Some more key messages are to listen to your customers. So initially when I launched Charter School Business Management, I was just doing the professional development and training for 10 schools, and then they said, well, why can't I just hand you all of my finances and you can just manage this for me? And I was, good thing I was listening, because then I said I can do that. I would have to hire somebody, I can train them, I would do a brain transfer from what's in my brain to someone else's brain, and then I'll check their work and make sure that it was all done correctly, on time. And they said, yes, we can do that. So I always listened for what other new services that they want. When networking and building relationships with someone, I totally advise creating a mutually beneficial relationship. So if you're that annoying person that's, oh, I wanted this, I want that, but you're not looking out for who you're talking to, it's always creating a reciprocal relationship where loyalty is a two-way street. Winding down, so thanks so much for your patience so far. I encourage you also to be, a lot of times I'll see people getting down on themselves and just acting like their own worst enemies. And I encourage you to do the exact opposite. Be your own best friend, believe in yourself, have confidence in yourself, and have the guts to challenge yourself so that you can change. Another concept that we have throughout the organization is, we call it execution is everything. So the ability to get things done, if you promise that you're going to get something done, get it done to the best of your abilities, and get it done on time. If you can get it done early, that's even better. So you have to recognize yourself and what you're good at versus what you're not so good at. So to be transparent about myself, I'm very good with the visionary, and this is what we need to do, this is who we need to be serving. But our president and chief operating officer, Karen, she's very good at all about let's get things done. So you need that both vision and execution to get this done. I'd also encourage you to have a lot of fun. So we at the organization, we have a lot of fun together. On our annual anniversary of the company at the end of March, we go karaokeing together, we go bowling, we go to comedy shows, Broadway shows, just have a great time. And if it's not fun, then what's the point, right? And then there's two organizations that have had a huge impact on our business. And if you ever launch your own social entrepreneurship organization, there's a nonprofit called B Lab that certifies businesses as a certified B Corporation, where B stands for benefit, and it's for companies that are doing good in the world, for society and for the environment. And there's also the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which is aiming to help 10,000 small businesses with growing their firms, creating more jobs, and helping people stay in jobs. So just wrapping up, wanted to share some good news. Now that we have we're helping so many charter schools, we're actually launching a second company. You may have seen at the end of the video, Our second company is called Foresight Financial Services for Good, and we want to challenge ourselves again to help more individuals. So we're going to be helping nonprofits, we're going to be helping social enterprises, and then we also want to help minority-owned and women-owned small businesses. So in closing, I'd like to thank my wife, Nadia, and my daughter, Reina. They are very understanding when I am, working all the time, nonstop. I definitely spend a lot of time at home as well, but they're very, very understanding. I'd like to thank my parents for giving us the opportunity, because they came from a very small village in India where life would have looked very different had they not taken the leap of faith and stayed there. So they've impacted my world tremendously. And I thank IYF once again for this opportunity to speak to you, and be happy to take questions and answer anything that's on your mind right now. I think there's some microphones right there in the middle.
Hi, I was listening to your how you were encouraging students. I wasn't so sure if I heard correctly, if you had any challenge on your way during your path. Did you have any challenge, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, I had so many challenges. So in the beginning, especially the first 3 years of any business, it's what's called the proof of concept phase. Like, you have this idea, and it's so easy to fall in love with your own idea, but if people aren't paying you to do that idea, then the business is going to die, right? So in the beginning, it was just me, right? I needed to make enough money to earn my own living, and then as soon as the clients said, hey, can't you just do this work for me instead? I said, well, okay, I have to hire somebody. So I took a leap of faith again, hired somebody without even having enough work for myself. So, from a business standpoint, it made no sense. It was just like, well, what are you doing hiring somebody? You don't have enough work. But then I said, I have to go out there and sell. So anyone and everyone who I could talk with about this idea that I had, and the knowledge that I had built up at Explore Charter School for 4 years, was no one could take that away from me. So I was a numbers nerd behind the scenes, and I wasn't comfortable in this public role, but I just kept meeting people. I kept meeting people and describing, what are your pain points? I would listen first and say, what are the types of problems that you're having that perhaps I can help you with? And if I can't help you with, I can introduce you to someone who can help you. And then they would remember that. So very often I would get a phone call out of nowhere and say, oh, so-and-so told me to talk to you because they're convinced that you can help them. So I would be reaching people that I didn't even have any relationship with, because I had a conversation between one person, and then they went and started telling other folks because they would hear great things about us and what we could do. But yeah, that was a challenge. Cash flow management was a challenge, because my team, I always believe that I have to pay my team on time, twice a month, on the 15th and the 30th. And if there was no cash to pay myself, then I wouldn't pay myself. So I had to get a credit line with a bank. The bank would say, well, you just started. I don't want to lend you any money. I'm afraid you're going to lose all the money. So we had to wait a few years to have that, and I would dip into my own savings to make sure that my staff got paid. And it was almost kind of unbelievable what happened. So the initial gentleman who gave me my first $50,000 contract, after Hurricane Katrina, he said, I'm going to be moving to to New Orleans. After Hurricane Katrina, there's just a lot of work to be done down there. So I jokingly said to him, I said, hey, listen, I helped you here. I'd love to help down there. And he said, yeah, I'll call you. And I thought it was one of those, yeah, I'll call you, whatever, man. And a few months later, he calls me and says, okay, I need you here. Can you help? And I was knee deep in all other work that was going on in New York City. And I said, yes, absolutely, I can help you. He said, okay, then I need you down, in 1 month, come on down for a whole week. And I went down to New Orleans and started helping schools get started down there. So it was, to a degree, it felt like it was all meant to be. There was just so many challenges, and then growth has its own challenges where I called it just-in-time hiring, where I would get more work than we can handle, and then say I would have a few people waiting on the bench that I could say, all right, I have enough work for you, come join us now. And it was really chaotic, and it was really nerve-wracking. There's all sorts of white hair in my goatee now in my head and everything, and it is very stressful, but it's very empowering as well, because you can look back and say, wow, we survived that somehow.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So you say that you help nonprofits and you help a bunch of people. So how do we contact you if we want to speak to you?
Oh,
email,
sure. I guess we could put the contact information up there, but I'll give you my email address. It's rthakkar at C as in charter, S as in school, B as in business, M as in management.
Wait. So charter?
No, it's just CSBM.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just spelling it out. So C as in Charlie, S as in Sam, B as in boy, M as in Mary.com.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably the best way.
Okay. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm sure there's more questions.
Hello.
Questions?
Here.
I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. There you go.
My question is your next step gonna be like, are you looking forward to open an internship?
Yes. Yeah. I should have mentioned that. So we have all sorts of internships that are available. It's a highly competitive process because we want the best of the best on our team, and then some of those interns it's led to full-time work. We have 5 vacancies right now at our company. We need more bookkeepers and accountants who know their stuff. If they're CPAs, if you know them, if you are one, please send me your resume. I would be happy to forward it on to my recruiting team, and they would do phone interviews and in-person interviews. And then we've had probably 20 or 30 interns in the past year and a half, and it's been a wonderful program where they love, working directly at our offices in Manhattan, as well as they go to several of the schools. Out of the 100 schools that we're helping, they go to those schools as well to help in so many different ways. So yeah, we'd be happy to connect with you about internships.
Hi, back here all the way in the back. Really enjoying your presentation. I have a question about how it is that you sell the benefit of your service for such an abstract concept as training and professional development.
Sure. So I really thought about what is it that they need, right? So if there's no person that's out there that's an expert in absolutely everything that they do. So to an educator, the analogy that I give to principals of schools is, if you want to mess up the academics of your school, then hire me as your principal while you manage your finances, because I'm not an expert in academics and you're not an expert in finances, so that'll be a real foolproof way of messing everything up. But if you're allowed to do what you're best at, and then you hire us to do what we're best at, and whether it's to do it, whether it's to do the work on your behalf, or it's to teach you how to do it. So some people, some of our competitors will say, "What's wrong with you? Why are you teaching them the secret sauce? Why are you teaching them how to do this work themselves?" And I said, "Look, it's part of my philosophy of business karma. You have to do what the client wants, and if they want for you to teach them how to do the work, then that's what you have to do. You know." So I do that, and the reality of it is we train somebody, and then what happens sometimes is that one person can't do what a whole team of people could do, so that person either gets fired or they quit, or they just say, "I can't handle it," and then they come back and say, "Well, you know, you trusted us enough to tell us all of your business secrets. I want to hire you back because that one person couldn't do it." So it may sound abstract when I'm describing it just in words, but if I had a PowerPoint presentation and spelled it out and showed you all the different boxes of services, then it would be like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense." So I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
There's another
Yes.
hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
right here. So I heard that you had to take a leap of faith originally to quit your old job to get into what you are doing now. So how did you kind of get into that area where, how did you market yourself to talk to the right people that you needed to talk to so that you could make sure that you were getting paid for this new idea of concept of service?
Yeah, so I was very open and honest and transparent about the whole process. So although I was very nervous to tell my old coworker that, "Look, I'm going to be leaving," after, it was such a high after, because charter schools are very, you exchange on autonomy in exchange for accountability. So if the charter school is doing bad and the student achievement results are not there, or if they're mismanaging their finances, they can get shut down, unlike a traditional public school. So I went to the New York City Charter School Center and I said, "Look, they were for many years were encouraging me to go out on my own." They said, "You have this reputation, you should do this." And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay all my other bills?" And they said, "Look, you can do this." So when I finally said, "Yes, I'm interested," then they said, "Okay, look, we're getting off our feet. We'd love for you to teach class all day Friday to these 10 schools that are opening in fall of 2006. And I said, "Before I go and create all this curriculum, I'd like to actually meet with each one of the 10 schools and understand their needs before I go and assume what their needs actually are." And I found, I was glad that I trusted my instincts, because the 10 schools had 10 completely different needs. Some didn't hire their own finance and operations people at all, so I helped them hire the right people. Some hired the finance person, but not the operations, so I helped them hire the operations. Some were strong in HR, but they never understood finance properly, so I trained them in finance. So all these iterations, it was just a very customized approach, and I wanted it to be, I wanted people to feel supported. That was the biggest thing. So if they sent me an email, within 10 minutes, they had an email response with the answer, or let's schedule a time to talk about that. So they felt like, "Oh wow, here's somebody who's responsive to my needs and is answering my questions." Because in education, I'm not sure if you know, but sometimes with the New York State Education Department or the New York City Department of Ed, it's hard to get an answer because their legal department won't allow them to say something. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape. So when there was responsiveness to all the different questions, it's like, wow, you ask a question, you get an answer. So it was providing the best service that I could, and then they would just refer word of mouth. Thanks. It's hard to see with all the lights. There's a question over here. Is the microphone there yet or no?
How you doing?
Hi.
All right, so you do internships, you do services, you train people. Did you come up with this model in the beginning, or did you kind of just come up with all these different services as you go?
So that's a great question. So did I do this? Did I come up with it? No. The initial concept of the training was there because that was the thing that I was most frustrated about, was that finance and operations people and administrative people did not get professional development. So that was the initial goal. But I was listening to the market big time. So even now, we listen to our clients and we say, what is it that you really want? And they'll say, could you help us with our fundraising services? So we have a pilot program to help. We have a former director of fundraising who's helping schools with their fundraising needs now. Then schools would say, I'm not going to outsource the operations, so managing the school food, the arrival and dismissal, the school student records, we can't really outsource that well because that's like a full-time role. But they said, can't you do some consulting services related to operations? And we said, yes, absolutely. So we hired a former director of operations from a school for 5 years, and we're trying that out. Now there's demand from other states. So we have a pilot in New Jersey, we have a pilot program in Connecticut, and now there's folks in Tennessee, in Memphis and Nashville that are interested in our services, as well as DC, as well as going back to New Orleans. So it's constant listening. So, I'm sure you've heard with like Twitter and Google and all, Uber and all these big companies that are out there, you have to be really ready to pivot as soon as the market, and you have to stick with an idea. There's a limited time frame when you're doing it as an entrepreneur without venture capital, because if someone believes in your idea and you're coming up with this new thing and they want to give you millions and millions of dollars to go run with that idea, that doesn't come without a cost. Then they're going to tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it by, what kind of profits they need to generate by what time frame. And we were free from all of that because I didn't want any investors, and I was perfectly fine if the business idea failed. At least I knew that I tried. At least that I knew I went for it, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could make it on my own. I didn't want some other person telling me what to do, and yet again, here I am. Why did I do that? I knew I could have done it myself, but yeah, I'm constantly listening for other ideas. Almost like I'm telling you, the great ideas that came from the company came from my team or came from our clients. One example is one of our clients was really focused on wanting to create a financial report that didn't just tell them their budget versus actuals, of saying, okay, historically for the past 3 months, how did we do? Did we do well financially or not? They said, we want to know where we're headed by the end of the fiscal year, so that if we have a $300,000 surplus, then we can make a decision today to hire that extra teaching assistant or math specialist or literacy specialist, because we want our students to achieve today. So we built this report for them. That was an idea that the client had. I was kicking myself saying, why didn't I think of that in the first place? But it came from our clients, so we're always listening, always engaging. We have a client appreciation party every year right after audit season is over. Audit season ends on October 31st. So the first Thursday in November, we always have a party to get everybody together and thank them for trusting us to manage their $500 million worth of public funds. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, great. Other questions? I think there's a question over there. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so it's time. Okay, great. All right, so I'm getting the signal to stop. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.